What's going on? This is George Arjour or George on Tap, and today we're doing the Cleveland Cavaliers, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Now, the Cleveland Cavaliers, well, we all know this is for Cleveland. They've had one championship in their history, and that's because they have one of the, in my opinion, second greatest player of all time in LeBron James. And LeBron James himself had carried the Cleveland Cavaliers to the NBA Finals multiple times. He's won an NBA championship, and overall, LeBron James just is obviously and easily the greatest thing in the franchise's history. So let's start off with the Cleveland Cavaliers good, and that's obviously LeBron James. I mean, this is pretty easy to figure out what is the good during the Cleveland Cavaliers franchise. I mean, we know we have the Brad Daugherty days. We know, the shot over Elo days. They were in the playoffs all the time. We know we have the World Be Free days, but the LeBron James era is really the good for the Cleveland Cavaliers. LeBron James is the greatest thing to ever happen to that franchise, maybe the greatest thing to ever happen in Ohio sports, and maybe you want to say Jim Brown. I still think it's LeBron James in general. I mean, he carried that city of Cleveland. He brought them their first major championship in a very, very, very long time. And overall, the Browns franchise hasn't been very good. The Guardians, or back then the Indians franchise, had suffered through a lot of heartbreak. Overall, the Cleveland franchises haven't really had that big of a history. So, if LeBron James being able to bring him a championship, that's obviously the good. Now, the bad. I'm going to say the bad is the Dan Gilbert letter to LeBron James. I think, well, you know what? Let's rewind this. I think the bad is the Sean Kemp era. So when I was young, I'm a Seattle Supersonics fan, and the Cleveland Cavaliers did a blockbuster trade where Terrell Brandon, I think, went to Milwaukee, Vin Baker to Seattle, and Sean Kemp to Cleveland, if I'm remembering that exactly correctly. And the Cleveland Cavaliers now had a piece in Sean Kemp that's supposed to be a super duper star. I mean, after the 1996 season, the Sonics went to the NBA Finals. Sean Kemp was arguably the second best player in the league after Michael Jordan. And so, the Cleveland Cavaliers thought they were getting a really, really big superstar. And what happened there was that, the NBA lockout, and Sean Kemp showed up out of shape and on drugs maybe. And, they said he did have a drug problem, so he never really panned out for them. So the bad is the Sean Kemp era in Cleveland. Now, the ugly. I would say the ugly is the Dan Gilbert letter to LeBron James. I mean, that letter, we all know what was in it. It was not the best look for Dan Gilbert and the ownership group of the Cleveland Cavaliers. Overall, he was able to salvage that relationship with LeBron James somewhat. Some say there's still a lot of tension there, but he was at least able to bring him back to come back to Cleveland, win a championship, and overall kind of fix that relationship despite that ugly, ugly letter by Dan Gilbert to LeBron James. And overall, that would be the good, bad, and ugly of the Cleveland Cavaliers. Once again, the good is the LeBron James era. I think that was pretty easy. I don't think anyone's surprised by that answer there. The bad is the Sean Kemp era. Unfortunately, that didn't really pan out in the three-way trade that sent Terrell Brandon away from the Cleveland Cavaliers. And the ugly is the Dan Gilbert letter to LeBron James, where he thought the self-proclaimed king would never win a championship before Cleveland did. He did. Overall, Dan Gilbert's letter might be one of the ugliest moments in the franchise's history. So if you liked this video, my name is George Arjour or George on Tap. Make sure you hit that like and subscribe button. We're going to see you next.